And on behalf of the Academy of Osseointegration and the Dental Guys podcast, I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And I'm John, the Dental Guy. And we are continuing to have high-level conversations. And I love how, yesterday we kind of broke up a little of the clinical discussion with kind of a completely different thought process with Dr. Boucher and Dr. Paquette. And I think today I'm looking forward to that as well. We've had some high-level clinical discussion. And now it's time to bring on a friend of the podcast.
I really love it when we have somebody on that knows us, right? Because there's a vetting process to this, I think, right? And we
on both sides, right?
We sure appreciate Dr. J. Malmquist coming back on and talking to us about dentistry and really today about the business model of dentistry. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And
it's been a while.
I know, 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
We set a very important precedent in that we were the first meeting to cancel in the face of the pandemic. And then it sort of went worldwide.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
AO was the first major meeting to cancel.
Wow.
And a lot of other organizations looked to our leadership.
That's awesome.
That's impressive.
Kevin Smith and the board were to be congratulated.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, last time, we go back a couple of years ago and we were talking to you at that time about a little bit about what your practice was going through and some cool transitions that were happening. Your son was coming into practice and things were moving and shaking. And
you met my son.
Yeah. Exactly.
My son Michael joined. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was sort of maybe where we wanted to start the conversation today in talking about, practice and business and the kind of the business and practice of implant dentistry coming together. Talk a little bit about what's been happening in your practice, a little bit about maybe your practice to kind of tell people who don't know you, where you practice, kind of the focus of your practice. And then let's talk maybe about that transition a bit, like what's been going on the last couple of years.
Well, I practice in a very famous place. As a matter of fact, it's Portland, Oregon, which has been on the news almost continuously for a year and a half to 2 years. And we moved into a new facility on the south waterfront, which is about 4 to 5 blocks due east from where all the riots were. So it was a little traumatic and certainly had an effect on us, that plus the pandemic. But we've recoiled very nicely and we certainly enjoy being there now. And Michael is taking over pretty much the running of the practice as I sort of start to fade back a little bit. But as far as the business standpoint goes, we had a decided dip, as everybody did, with the pandemic. And then that coupled with the political upheaval in Portland was certainly a negative because people viewed us as being downtown, even though we weren't. And so there was a certain reluctance to come downtown. But we've more or less overcome that, frankly, because of, I think, good care and really taking care of people well and trying to give them the very best care we can.
Well, when you think about, there's kind of two roads I think we wanted to go down with this conversation. One is the idea of preparing your practice for bringing a new doctor in, which you had, and there's lots of ways for that to go, whether it's, joining to continue to grow with two doctors, whether that's a transition in and a transition out as you're sort of talking through. But there's a lot that goes into that, especially in the referral-based world, to build relationships and to build that goodwill that you've created over the years. Talk a little bit about some of those challenges and some things that have happened to kind of prepare. What should clinicians be thinking about if they're looking at bringing a new doctor into their practice?
Well, I think the most important thing that they have to think about is they have to have compatibility, and they have to have the same set of goals with regards to success and patient care that the person who's bringing them in has. And I'm going to speak this afternoon on the business of dentistry, a little bit of business of implant dentistry. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is just what we face in terms of what the disruptors are, and then just a little bit about success and what success is. And then, but my final theme, and I hate to give away my talk a little too soon, but my answer at the end is you've got to love what you do, and you've got to find somebody that loves what they do. It's got to be your focal point of your your practice, perhaps of your life in
Mhm.
terms of being successful. And I've got kind of a surprise I'm not going to give away to you, but my final slide is very impressive in regards to who shares that idea with us. Um, I don't know if somebody's going to see this before the
They
lecture.
may.
Yeah, they may.
Okay,
So,
This is
yeah.
live.
so I'm going to
don't
hold
give
it.
away the punchline.
I'll hold
yeah.
it back. Right. So I think having a structure within the practice that's going to support whoever's there.
Mm.
We have, as I think we talked about when we talked before, we have clinical observers that come in their final year of residency in OMS and spend anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks with us and see just how we do things. And everything from the clinical aspects to the business side of things. And so that's a very popular program.
You know, some people have put dentist into a category in business as a technician. But
Yes.
besides being the technician, there are managers, and then there's a person that actually sets the vision of the practice or the business per se.
Right.
You know, who have you surrounded yourself with over the years to help you? Obviously, you're a technician, and but to help manage, or maybe you did the management, and then also set the vision of the practice. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, that's an excellent point, and your vision is amazing. I have 3 people that work for us. One has been with me 26 years, one has been with me 18 years, and one has been with me 14 years, and 2 that have recently retired. And so taking care of the employees and having the employees share the same vision that you do is something that's just paramount to success. And so I have gone out of my way, and now Michael's taking up the torch and doing that in terms of passing the torch on, in terms of educating these people and educating them from the standpoint of what we do. For instance, I'll give you an example. We had a 1-hour lecture the other day in the office where we talked about what makes the Four Seasons the Four Seasons. Why is the Four Seasons different than, say, the Marriott here?
Yeah.
You know, what it comes down to more than anything is attention to detail.
Yep.
And taking care of people and making everybody feel important. And so I've tried to put that feeling into the employees, the key employees, and they have really grabbed it and run with it. So that's one of the ways that we've done this success-wise, was with that in mind, and really stressing that. And one of the slides I'm going to show this afternoon is, you know, are you quantity or are you quality?
It's great.
What do you want? Do you want to be? If you want to be quantity, then you're not going to be my partner. If you want to be quality, then we can talk. And I think that's very important. So I think putting success in terms of outcomes very high on the list in terms of what patient outcomes you should expect and what patients should expect in terms of outcomes.
One of my mentors early on told me that you can't it won't just happen to you with success. It won't just happen to you. You have to think about, you know, what is your ideal day? When do you want to start? When do you want to end? Who do you want to work with? And you have to work toward that. Did you have any practices that you looked at as you started, or people that have come along in your practice life that you say, I want to be like that person. I want my practice to be more like what that person's doing. Have people influenced you in that way?
That's a good question. I don't think I come up with a specific person. I think that I can't say that I have one person that was a mentor. I had many mentors that were very helpful in developing my surgical skill set. And then I've had mentors that have helped me develop my perspective in terms of just principles and ethics.
Yes.
And trying to keep an ethical thing. And then I see people, you see people, we all see people that work a long day. And I don't think dentistry is an 8-hour day. I think dentistry goes well beyond an 8-hour day, and including leaking into the weekends to do things. So it's been just a culmination of people.
Yes.
That I have looked to over the years in the committee work I've done in leadership positions and all that, and just a collage that continues to feed the practice.
Certainly, there are people that influence us that we're not even aware of. And one of the great things that you're going to be able to do is influence your son or your associate per se,
Right.
maybe even partner. We're not privy to that, but you're going to be able to mentor him. But you mentioned something that I think is key, is you said, I'm giving him a role, right?
Right.
And that, to me, speak to that about what creates accountability is actually lending a role in some ways to your son, and how does that work?
Well, of course, with family, it's much more difficult probably at times than it is with non-family.
Sure.
Because you can be a little bit more dictatorial with non-family. But with regards to family, first of all, it's a leadership position that I try to show. So I'm usually the first one there, and many times the last one to leave. And so I'm asking him to sort of follow that way with the staff. And then just the way you handle patients, the way you follow up, the way you take care of the problems that occur. And, there's a lot of problems that occur in a surgical practice. It's not a slam dunk. So I just tried every day to give him an idea about, for instance, what does our stationery look like?
Right.
How does the waiting room look? Are the magazines arranged? Do you say yeah or yes, sir? Just little things. How do you address a patient? Do you ever address a patient by their first name until they tell you to? How do you dress? How do you groom? What you look like. And just what the outlay of the office looks like in terms of surgery is very precise. So if you've got a sloppy office, you're going to maybe have a sloppy surgeon, and that's not good. So those are the things I sort of stress with him. And then of the economics of it, that you've got to be progressive in terms of having new equipment, be on the cutting edge of innovation, and yet don't strangle yourself with a set of leases and outcomes that won't allow you to realize a reasonable return for your investment.
Yes. Yes. And I think that just the idea of these soft skills, as it were, the things that are harder to put in a textbook. It sounds like you've got sort of one hat that I think we all wear these two hats. One is, subscribing yourself to quality, making sure that you're reading the right research and that you're going to the meetings at the AO, for instance, making sure that you're surrounding yourself with experts, but also it's the soft skills. It's, talking about, I remember learning from Starbucks, every morning the manager goes out to the parking lot and makes the walk into the counter and looks to see if everything's in line. And what's the customer going to see when they walk in that Starbucks? It should be a certain thing. And we can learn a lot from
what
that. You're
talking about, John, is a leader, right?
Yes.
And can a leader be trained? That's a question,
well,
right?
I think in some aspects, yes, they can be trained. They can certainly look at leadership videos and things like that and get ideas and take a little bit from here and a little bit from there. But leadership essentially ultimately comes from within. And it's the image that you project to whoever you're with, and the preciseness with which you do things. And repetition. One of the things I've stressed with Michael is that surgery is repetition. You're not going to do something different one day and then different the next day. Success is based on repetition.
Yeah.
So and he's been very good about taking this on. And of course, he came from a wonderfully background of training. He was at Baylor University for his OMS training, and 5 years there, and then I spent a year down in Dallas as a fellow, and so he really comes with a skill set that I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I wish when I was training, there was those opportunities.
We talked about this a couple of years ago, but I think for those of you who maybe haven't seen that, it's great to kind of go back to this. What are some of the things as a referral-based practice that you've done with your referrals that you feel have been able to grow your practice to what it is and having the relationships that you have? Why do people send patients to you? Why do your referrals trust you?
So my brand, so to speak, I think that's the word that you young guys use nowadays.
Sure.
But my brand was always to be intellectually very competent. and sort of have the answers for things that maybe other people didn't have the answers for, or just be, so it wasn't going to the golf course. It wasn't going to lunch. It was trying to provide intellectual support for my referral base with lectures, study clubs, or just good case outcomes. I write everybody a letter, and Michael uses texting, which drives me nuts because I don't do so well. And then he's finally gotten over the Instagram thing, but going on Instagram and seeing how people do things. I mean, it sometimes on Instagram, it's just, you say, are you serious?
Yes.
You really are doing this? So mine was from an intellectual capability. I wanted to be, I don't want to say the smartest guy in the room, but I wanted to have the intellectual aspect to be the most important.
Yeah. Yeah. To try to be able to answer the questions.
Right.
And that's sort of the way that Wes and I have tried to be. It's one of the reasons the podcast started, is because we wanted to always try to have the right answers and not be left going, well, I don't know why. And if we didn't know why, that's okay. But we wanted to try to figure that out. And it's interesting because that model, I think, it's a slower start. And correct me if I'm wrong.
It is.
It's a slower start than, going to the golf course and just having drinking buddies or something. But in the long run, it seems like it creates sustainability.
Well, one of the things I tell both my boys is that, this is not a sprint. It's a marathon, and every step means something. And so you've got to constantly building on what you've done, looking forward to your future, whether it's in the business world. His brother is in the business world and quite successful. And with Michael, it's a matter of just taking the right steps forward and spending the time. And, the young people are different now than when I was there. There's different focus points, and you're both very young. I mean, that.
Thank you.
It's different for us that have been around for a while, and you can even get a little bit negative with what you see, and you have to work really hard not to be negative.
Right. So. Certainly, you mentioned you've had recently a few of your employees of long time retire, and you've got other employees there that have been there 20, 30 years almost.
Right.
And really, this is a new environment we're in. We've seen a lot of people that have kind of reevaluated.
Well, let me tell you, I know we were kind of going, and let me just tell you what we did.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really important for your audience to hear this.
Yeah.
We made the decision on day one of the pandemic and we have a very progressive blue state. So, we're still wearing masks, I think, when we go to the bathroom. It is just crazy. But we made a decision to pay all the employees their full salary and all benefits through everything, even though we were closed down.
Wow.
And we took care of emergencies as we could, but there weren't that many. But everybody was paid through the whole entire pandemic. Full salary, full set of benefits. And they came in and they did paperwork and things that would be beneficial to us, but we didn't lose a single employee. So when the bell rang and we could go back to work, we had a full crew and we were ready to go. And I think that's really, sure, it was a big investment, and it cost us, personally a little bit, but in the long run, it's negligible.
Right.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. So where are you going to find people and how are you hiring now?
Well, we're trying very hard. We're down one surgery assistant, and we have had ads in the paper and on the various places that you try to get employees, and it's been very disappointing. I mean, they make an appointment for an interview and don't show.
Right.
It's a different world.
Right.
And so we're struggling like everybody else is.
And as we see that struggle, I think that really trying to find people that align with your vision is the key. And that's to create that long-term employee, is to find somebody that has the same passions as you, right?
Yes. Now, talking about an interesting thing that's happening right now with DSOs in dentistry, right? It's obviously disrupting.
Yes.
We're hearing about going back to the transition idea. It's another mode where clinicians can potentially transition out of practice or into a different type of practice. Obviously, you're doing things differently there, but what's the role of that? What is that doing? What's the future look like for that, and from your perspective?
I think the future for DSOs is incredibly robust, given educational loans and deficits, and the concept of more people wanting to work less hours in a more restricted environment. Certainly, you give up your independence and some of your ingenuity when you do this. But I think the DSOs are only going to continue to grow, and it's going to be the single or group practitioners. It's their job to figure out how to sort of negotiate a niche, because there's going to be a niche.
Yes.
Not everybody wants to go to a DSO,
Right,
or to an HMO or anything like that. There's going to be all kinds of concierge type services that'll be available. People still want that.
Yes.
And I think there's always room for quality. Over
Absolutely.
quantity. Always room,
And we've seen that in medicine, right? Because we've seen the concierge like idea, as you say.
Right.
There's a niche for that. And I think it's actually a rather large niche. I think everybody wants the best.
Right.
Now, they can't always afford to do the best in some cases, or there are limitations, maybe availability, but everybody, when given the option, pretty much wants that.
That's right. And the idea of one of the things we try to talk with our patients is, insurance doesn't pay for everything.
Right.
And some of what we do is very discretionary. And, it may come down to some other material thing, but what we do is still, and a lot of times, very discretionary.
Yes.
I remember as we get to the end here, I remember having to write an essay in dental school as to why we need teeth. And of all things, it came from the orthodontic department. We all had to write a 2-page essay on why do we need teeth? And the essence of that is we don't.
That's right.
So all three of us could be obsolete.
Right.
So I think it's a matter of just how you present yourself and everything. And some of the things I'll talk about this afternoon are just, I'm going to talk about a fee. I'm going to talk about trends. I'm going to talk about profitability. And when it comes to implants, I'm going to talk about whether an implant is in fact a commodity. With 80 or more implant companies in the United States, is it a commodity like a block of gold? And so what makes it not a commodity? So what takes a value and turns it into a premium product? It's a support structure that the companies give us. So those are all things you have to kind of consider when you're buying product.
Absolutely.
Certainly, the Academy of Osseointegration appreciates your contribution to dentistry and to the Academy itself. Tell us a little bit about what you're excited about with the Academy of Osseointegration.
Well, I think I'm sad to be off the board. I'm sad to have to step away. I think the Academy is the single greatest organization in dentistry, in implant dentistry. It sits at the pinnacle of the pyramid of organizations, and it has the ability to shape a lot of the future for implant dentistry. And it's multi-specialty, so it brings everybody together in an environment like this and allows them to function, all as one.
Yes.
So I think that's very, very important. You don't have periodontists or oral surgeons or prosthodontists, in their own little silos. They're all together here, working together. And so all the lectures, I had to tailor my lecture to the fact that I had an audience that's going to be quite diverse.
Absolutely.
So I think the Academy of Osseointegration is key to that future.
Yes, and
amazing.
We feel the same way, and even to the point of knowing that we have to be able to respond to not just the clinical, not just the research, but also to the business and how it's changing, and knowing where we should position ourselves to create that niche.
Well, this is a landmark symposium this afternoon. The fact that they're going to have 4 people get up and talk about 4 different aspects of business.
Yes, yes,
that's very unusual.
That's
absolutely,
right.
Because everybody's afraid to talk about money.
That's right.
That's right.
We are so clinically driven and so technically driven. We forget about those 2 other aspects of business. And I think that it's I'm glad that we've got to know you and what you have done again for your area and your community and the patients you're caring for. I remember when I got on your website, I said, this is the kind of person that I want to surround myself with, because it's exceptional dentistry. And you know what I saw in there? evidence-based practice.
I'm going to
right.
say that this afternoon.
Yes.
I have a slide. It's on our wall.
Yes,
Yes.
I remember seeing
it's
that.
on our wall.
Yes.
We're an evidence, and we are.
Yeah.
We try our very best to be evidence-based.
Right.
And so it's been a real pleasure to meet the two of you, and what you're doing for us is phenomenal.
Well, thank you
And
so
we
much.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
We
I
are.
would come back anytime you ask me.
Oh,
Well, that means a lot.
means a
That
lot.
means a lot.
Yeah.
And yes, the evidence-based, we love what we love about this is as you said, it is a marathon, and we believe that in the end, doing it right wins.
That's right.
And even from a business standpoint,
That's right.
whether you look
Yeah.
at it from an ethical standpoint, a sleep better at night standpoint.
It may be slow growing at first.
That's right.
But in the end, the satisfaction.
That's right.
Oh man.
It's
it's
just
pretty
worth
special.
it.
I
It's
know
worth it.
Michael would love to have an opportunity to spend time with
Yeah.
the two of you again,
Yeah.
because he really enjoyed that. And he was very nervous at the beginning. And at the end, he said, "Wow, Dad, this was kind of fun."
Yeah.
Well,
And I
good.
said, "Well, these are good guys, you
Yeah.
know."
Well, thanks
So,
for being with us
you're
today.
quite
we
welcome.
really
Thank you so much,
appreciate it. It's
Dr.
great
Thanks
to
for
see
asking
you.
me. Thank you.
Well, Dr. J. Malmquist joining the dental guys again, and man, I'm thankful that he was able to come on. And 2 years, man, time
I know.
flies.
Is it
right?
hard to believe? I still remember now when we were, we talked about this on another show yesterday that, we kind of remember where we were when the world stopped
Mhm.
and when Seattle got canceled, the
Right.
AO meeting in Seattle. And here we are full circle. But just to his point, I'm excited to hear his lecture on the main podium, because, the idea, this, we didn't even get to talk about it, but the commoditization
Of
right,
implants.
is an implant. An implant is a Big Mac. Is that what we're selling?
Mm.
Or is it something special? Is there a value to this that we cannot put just based on saying, oh, we provide equivalent service to the next guy or the next girl, the next lady? Is there something more to it? And I think that is what we need to be focusing on if we want to have that niche.
That's
now, if you're
right.
looking to just do quantity,
That's right.
then it's different. You're talking about different things.
Well, again, we refer to the types of practices that you can have, right? And it's no different. Like business is business,
right?
It's no different than choosing, for lack of a term, a Walmart model, right, versus a Starbucks model, which focuses on maybe quality. Some would say, some would argue about that, and a customer service experience, right? And that's the thing is, like, you have to decide when you open a practice how you're going to practice, because
one of our previous guests said, do you want to sell the most burgers or the best burger?
That's right.
Right. And
that's right.
And so that is the decision we all have to make. And I think that Dr. Malmquist helped to kind of distill that down and say, we're trying to sell the best burger.
That's right.
What's that look like? And how do you do that? How do you make that in your practice? And how do you turn your practice into that, especially if you're just getting started?
Yeah.
Because I think it's daunting when you come out with the debt load, and there's practice transitions, and there's buying things, and there's DSOs around, and you have to decide what that looks like. So great discussion.
So if you're liking what you're seeing, we need you to like and share across your social media pages. But I tell you what's next right now.
Oh, yeah.
Is a high-level conversation.
We've been waiting for this.
We've been waiting. Friends of the podcast, Jack and Conrad, welcome back to the show. And it's been a while, right?
It's been a while. Good seeing you guys.
It's great to see you guys.
Hey, we came to party.
Yes. Well, that's why we invited you. We knew you'd bring the party, as always, right?
I was telling Jack, I can't believe we got invited back.
I know.
Most people wonder how they make it back on.
I know.
Right?
I know.
wonder
We've heard that
sometimes.
many times. Like, please, not those guys. No, actually, everybody's been saying, they're like, when is this going to happen again? Because we had some great discussions.
Yep.
We were discussing at that time some of the same things. We're going to maybe circle back with a new kind of renewed focus. And I think I want to start by saying that, we were just in Will Martin's talk just a few minutes ago, and he was, we were, and I will say, and I have no problem saying this. We were kind of like, so we didn't really get a lot of answers. And I don't mean that was anything that had to do with Dr. Martin. It was, everybody wants to know what the future holds, right? And as Dr. Martin said, if you want to make a fool of yourself, make predictions.
Right.
But he did bring in some really great discussion about where are we going. So we'll get to that. Why don't you guys, for those of us who don't know who you guys are, introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you're located, kind of some of your interests from the lab perspective.
Yeah, I'll let you shoot. I'm Conrad, owner of Absolute Dental Lab in we like to call it the Chapel Hill area of North Carolina. It sounds more mystique.
Yeah, it is.
does.
Very mystique.
We have branches all across the Southeast, and my counterpart here, Jack Marrano, runs our signature division. So.
Yeah, and we have Signature. I founded the Absolute Art team. It's the advanced restorative team. And we just presented right now. We presented for 3 hours, which is 2.5 hours too long. But a lot of what my background is prosthodontics, full arch, full mouth rehabilitations, materials. I love materials geek. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
There's so much of the talk surrounding around this team approach to dentistry, especially here at the Academy of Osseointegration. You guys are laboratory owners, technicians, and material scientists, really. And I think that, the names keep coming up when you keep hearing and seeing the names. And
you guys are not just doing lab work.
Yes.
You guys are testing.
You're changing dentistry,
working
honestly.
with residency programs, working with key opinion leaders, companies to figure out what's next,
Right.
and what's best. And I think that the low-hanging fruit discussion that everybody, we did just dive into it, is everybody wants to know what's next, or are we ready for what's next with, I think, materials science. And I know you talk about this all the time. And so we've had several people who have said, okay, we need to make sure we ask these guys about full arch, implant restorative materials.
Right.
And when Will Martin had the key opinion leaders kind of give their feedback, we were sort of ready for everyone to give one answer that was super progressive, but we heard a lot of the same things. Well, right now it's zirconia, but printed ceramics are coming, printed resins are coming, high performance polymers are around. They're obviously, what does the future look like?
I'll kick it off for you, okay? Yeah. When we last spoke, we were super excited about milling high glass polymers. I don't know if you remember, we were talking about the new generation, and maybe we don't need support. We can just cut a straight hybrid. And we've had our failures, unfortunately.
That's what I wanted to hear about.
Bleeding edge again.
We're here for you. It's all right.
But I think what we've learned, and then we started looking at printing these materials, Bago Varseo, we started morphing away because it's much less labor intensive. And we had some more failures. And I'm talking about full arch, full arch application. I think all these materials are pretty well tried and trusted for smaller cases, but we're looking for that full arch solution that we can do something affordable. And I'll let Jack touch on this a little bit more, but we started working with our digital denture division, and we were making fun of each other this morning. I always tell him, "Oh, you're going to talk on dentures? You don't know anything about dentures." And he's like, "Oh, you're going to talk on dentures? You don't know anything about dentures." But we're so excited about it because of the technology surrounding dentures. You asked me 2 years ago what would replace zirconia, and I was cautious not to say a printed polymer because I didn't think it would hold up. And we started working with the Flexera Smile material, and now I'm thinking it might actually be a lower glass polymer.
Ooh,
got exceptional. If you want to tell them about the last Boma case.
So we'll start off. I wanted to start off with this because of the failures we experienced. I tell everybody, my great success has everything to do with my miserable failures, both professionally and personally. I don't stray away from them. I look forward to them. And early on, with those high glass content millable materials, we had catastrophic failure. And that's the name of the game. Yep. The onus is on us and clinicians and meetings like the AO now, because material development is so rapid. That we have to properly vet these materials before they get back to the patients. Make sure that the research studies are done and completed, not just by the manufacturer, but independently as well. If we're looking at materials now, zirconia is still king as far as what we got out there. It's not a perfect material, but right now it's the best restorative material. That being said, looking forward into solutions that we have coming, it is very, very exciting. And it's all based just on material development. It's material development. So we've always wanted to print, but we didn't have the materials. Then, we've seen a great material with Lucitone. That's starting to come forward. Now with Flexera. And so now we're really seeing a progression in the materials With Flexera, there's a UAB study by Dr. Nate Larson, and that's just absolutely phenomenal. Between the wear rate, between the strength, they put it in the Instron machine. His study exactly replicates what we've seen previously with high glass content printed and milled materials, which they're exceptionally brittle. While they have great wear resistance, when they break in pieces. Now with Flexera, it does not exhibit those same qualities. So now we're moving forward in the right direction. We have a case with Dr. Lars Boma, and what he does is he uses a technique that he kind of coined or termed the phrase biomilling or biotyping. What he'll do is I'll make a provisional for him. He'll have the patient wear it for 5 to 6 months. He wants them to wear in their patterns of occlusion and function. When he's done with that and he's satisfied, he'll send it back to me and I'll make a copy STL file of it and go ahead and mill that out in zirconia.
At the current wear pattern?
At the current wear pattern.
Okay.
So this last case that we did it with Flexera. The case was in the mouth for 5 months. When he's seen the patient back on recall, I mean, there was wear, which he wants to see, but it wasn't excessive. It was very, very minor. And the interesting part about it was it looked like it was brand new. What I find most exciting, it didn't break, didn't chip. He said he actually looked at his assistant and said, "What are we doing today?"
Just to find out.
And so when he took it out of the mouth, I think the fascinating part about it, and Flexera has a glass content, but I think they've mastered the amount of glass. The intaglio surface was spotless. Spotless. And so now we got something we can get really excited for. Now, here's the question. It's very early on. What happens if we make one of those restorations unsupported? And then go ahead and how long will it last? Will it last a year, 2 years, 5 years? And then how long is long enough?
Right.
So if I can get a patient to wear it for 5 years, is that a bad thing if it fails at 5?
And that's what Martin brought up. He said, there's some approach of, okay, let's make the most indestructible material, but then there's a whole other idea of let's make a material that is inexpensive enough potentially that it can be maybe not disposable is not the word,
right,
but it could be intermediate term and we could just print another one.
Exactly.
Why have we been driven so hard in dentistry as prosthetic guys to just build something that lasts eternity?
Right.
Like it just seems
That's
like
just
that's
the way our
ingrained.
minds work, though.
And yet we're coming back to this idea. Like I don't ever tell a denture patient since 2000 when I was trained in dentures that their denture is going to last forever. I say for guys, you're going to get 5. For women, you may get 7, and you may get less than that. But we're going to have to redo or revise the prosthetic, remake it. What's going on?
And I think we went off the deep end on that as far as, well, it should last till you die, and you're 45 today.
It's totally the wrong approach.
And I think looking for something a little bit more economical, especially in the full arch space, because we get it all the time. A material like this, and it's very early, but what we've seen with this Lars Boma case being in the mouth so long, it looked the same as it did the day we delivered it. So maybe that 2-3 year device, keep the models, anything goes wrong, we make you a new one, you flip them out.
Right, like an Essex retainer, right? I mean, we need to redo those things.
But that's also, I think the lab, now, and this is where I want to hear your approach to this, because as dentists, I think we have liked to be able to say to a patient, oh, this will last you forever. But labs have a different pressure. The pressure of, if something breaks, whose fault is it?
Right.
Whose problem is it?
It's our fault.
And it's always the lab. Everyone knows it's always the lab's fault.
So blame us.
We know this. So
that's why we charge extra.
Right.
To blame us.
Exactly. So the question I think becomes is changing a mindset there. It's changing a mindset of saying, we haven't, hopefully this lasts you for 25 years, but if it lasts you for 5, that's kind of an expectation. And it changes, but that's getting over the hump with the dentist, I would think.
Yeah,
I will say where new technologies and materials are really helping is recovering.
Right.
Patient lose their denture now, we give you a new one in 24 hours.
Yes.
Exact same copy. It's amazing. Patient is a tough patient to satisfy with the original denture. We call it the Forever Smile. It's archived. Patient comes back, you print yourself a try-in, refresh the intaglio, and we send you a new denture. So it's an amazing place for us to be. I think we're finally seeing that materials are there. We're actually testing printable zirconia.
Yeah,
I think
printable
we're the first
zirconia
lab.
is here. We have it in the lab.
We're we got to be careful.
Yeah.
It's a little clunky.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's what we want to know.
It's definitely
They say so much.
Let's say Gen 1.
Yeah. So
That's a very nice way of saying it.
so one of the things we had to do was, wrap the printer in blue plastic to stop the external light from. So there's a lot of
Yes.
things.
Okay.
But let me tell you what really surprised us was the accuracy and the quality of the print.
Yeah,
sure.
Exceptional.
Hmm.
The color kind of
Yeah.
resembles the table at this stage,
Yes.
Okay.
but it's coming.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I think printable zirconia. I think printable zirconia will be just in time to be replaced by something else.
Well, so I
Uh-huh.
want to know, though,
That's-
why, Jack, you're the only person that said in Will Martin's lecture that you think that printable ceramics, polymers are the future. No one else in
Yep.
those key
I think
opinion leaders-
Ludlow, maybe.
Maybe Ludlow.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Ludlow's jaded too because he's super pumped over the last couple months,
That's
right?
true.
So he's jaded a little bit because he's excited about the possibilities of printing denture bases
Yeah.
and those type
But we
of things.
still had several people who said zirconia may become the universal material,
Right.
or that it's kind of here to
of course, it was
stay.
an open-ended question,
Right.
but why are you so
Right.
hot on this?
100%. It's going to be printed. If you look at milling technology, let's take dentistry out of it. Let's look at manufacturing.
There we go.
Mhm.
Milling technology is subtractive. It's subtractive. It's not additive. It's very inefficient. It's very expensive. In a lot of ways, it offers some inaccuracies during the process versus printing technology as an additive. Right, it's much more scalable. Okay, we have a issue in the laboratory business right now where we're looking at with lesser and lesser technicians being available. So printing technology, I would say, far more accurate, far more scalable, far more cost effective. And as the material development progresses, that's where it's going to be, not subtractive technology. And then you can take dentistry right out of the word and just look at manufacturing in the world today. And the whole movement is going towards printing, and so will we. We're just getting the materials.
And I think the question, I'll be really careful how I state this, but if you think about, chairside milling units, why did they not replace technicians like everybody initially thought? And they've made a very small impact
Yes.
on the industry. And it's because it's slow and it's not always as accurate. And, there's a lot of different things. What we're not seeing that with printing. I spoke at an event a while back with a pretty high esteemed speaker, and he's a milling guy, milling dentures. And we kind of got a little sideways with this. He said, I think milling is more accurate than printing dentures. And with all due respect, it's not, because you can't mill into an undercut. You can't mill into those fine. And what we've seen with now the new Flexero material and obviously the Lucitone, printing is the future. I think the one thing we agree on, 5 years from now, the material of choice will be a printable material.
Okay, 5 years. There's a prediction.
So that's where we wanted to kind of go, and I want to totally change the conversation.
I know this is
okay, because I know this is something we wanted to have you guys weigh in on, but we've been hearing just time after time after time in the last couple of days about a whole different thought process on where we're going with creating the virtual patient. Okay, and where the lab falls with this, and indulge me just a second because there's a little bit of like verbal vomiting here we have to do to kind of get to this point to kind of recap. So we talk about how the challenge is treatment planning, right? It's not so much the execution of treatment. Now, obviously, we have to have the right training as a dentist, as a clinician to execute the treatment. But the treatment planning, you guys spend a lot of time, frankly, treatment planning cases for you, which is ridiculous. Okay, let's just say that, right? You do it because you know what you're doing, and that's wonderful, and you've taken a lot of training. But there's a lot of need for treatment planning and a lot of maybe misunderstanding with treatment planning for a lot of our dentists that are maybe just started, maybe just don't have the training. So Christian Coachman, for instance, talks about, the creation of a virtual patient. Could we outsource treatment planning? Are labs going to be getting more into the world of saying, do we need treatment planners? Do we need to employ people to actually treatment plan these cases, because we don't have to have the analog anymore?
Employ dentists, really.
Right. Are we going to need this? Because could you have people in a completely different country that could send you everything virtually and digitally, and you could treatment plan? We know that labs struggle with how far do they reach into the treatment planning world for their clinicians? And where do you see the future of this going as we create the virtual patient? There's more pressure on the lab, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong on that. Where do you think we're going with that?
Right. Well, I mean, for us, it's a very integral part of what we do. I mean, we are not so much, it's not so much about the restoration, but the solution or the working with the clinician and that relationship. So yeah, no, absolutely. We'd be a big part of the virtual patient, I think.
I think, and I've seen the same drive. Everybody's trying to get the perfect, complete digital solution.
Yes.
Who owns the chair owns the market kind of thing. I think, personally, the company that engages the labs keeps the labs engaged. I think we've seen over the last 10 years, you can't cut the lab out.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's tried it. It just doesn't work because the labs own the relationships. The labs are ultimately the ones, because you can outsource denture design. It's not going to look like absolute denture. I can absolutely guarantee you that. And I think that's going to make the world smaller because now we'll be more chair side. Look at Dandy Dental. I got to give Dandy Dental credit.
Yep.
They figured out how to build a huge platform all on service. What we do is still ultimately a service industry. We're serving our customers and we've got to be a solution to them.
Right.
So I see that becoming a more integral part. I'm struggling to figure out what that would look like. What does the future look like?
Like you
said,
said, what parts the clinician, technician, team, patient is changing right now before our eyes as far as it's very a blending of the lines, not as far as me on the clinical side, but as far as the clinician. And it's due to the technology, the ability of data transfer, things like that, that I would say today, we're working closer together and better together than we ever have. And like you said, what exactly will that look like with that digital patient? And who's responsible for what part? Not exactly sure yet, but it's going to be. It's definitely going to be both groups that.
But you're not just charging for a restoration.
Yeah,
you're charging for really what you know.
Right.
But that's more difficult to quantify.
Yep.
And I feel like labs have and dentists too. We charge for procedures. We don't charge if we don't do something. Whereas say attorneys, they charge for their time.
I mean,
it's what you know. I mean, how do we figure this out? Because it seems like it's more now what you know is what you're really bringing to the table, because anybody can mill, anybody can print, quote unquote. Now it may not be the same quality, but they can buy the equipment.
And I think the huge consolidation, sorry, Jack, that we're seeing, we're seeing consolidation everywhere. DSOs, we've seen labs consolidate. So I think you're going to always have, it's going to drive to less labs. We're seeing a huge drought. There's no hands. There's just no hands in our industry. We're training 8 out of 10 technicians off the street right now, which is not always a bad thing.
There's good and bad about that.
But I do think AI is the ultimate link that will change.
AI is going to play a huge role in it, a huge role. And we have things right now where we have services where even for, let's say, dentures, we have clinicians that will design and send the design files, we'll assemble. And then we have others that they want us to design, send them back. You have a printer and you do assemble. So even our fee schedule, our pricing structure is changing. And then with the implementation of more AI, the AI that we see right now that exists has been incredibly beneficial. And that'll probably be a large part of that fully digital patient.
Because it kind of can make up, I think about what Align has done, for instance, with, you have an AI option to do your ClinCheck setup now. And there's a certain price point for that. Now, we could argue about how good that setup is compared to a technician doing it. Could there be a price point for, this is your AI veneer mock-up, and here's your Jack Marrano AI setup, and there's two different, is that where we're headed, do you feel like?
I think what it would do is it's going to take the arduous tasks out of the way. Everything we've seen with technology is, we used to do substructure support. Half the day we would just sit and wax substructure, and everybody had a different opinion on substructure support. Thank goodness we don't do layered ceramics anymore. But everything we've seen now is we're reserving the hands for the artistry. And I think that's probably where I've always said this kind of tongue in cheek, but I think it's true. The quickest rise and fall of any part of our industry technically is going to be our designers, our planners. The guys who knows 3Shape, because they're being replaced by AI. And my business partner Drew, he said, but we can't help these people. I said, well, we either help them or we become one of the obsolete ones. You can't fight technology. You have to be a part of it. And I think if you're a part of it, we can make it better. But I do believe AI any chairside solution, I think, will be successful if it can. It needs to stop trying to make a clinician a technician.
There we go.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a great way of putting it.
That's why your assistants didn't go to assistant school to become technicians.
Well, there's
And
always
that's-
going to be the people that want to tinker
Yeah.
and want to play with the things.
Yes.
And I think that there for a while, right, just like with CEREC and, CEREC 2 that I was even trained on. I mean, it's unreal what you were, able to achieve when that came out. But we all thought the lab will be obsolete in 20 years. And here we are 20 years later, and the lab is not obsolete.
And I think it's actually come full circle. I think
It
the lab is
has.
more important than it
Absolutely.
used to be.
Exactly.
But it's becoming more about the thinking
Yeah.
and the treatment planning. I mean, yes, there is the technical and the hands at the end too. So there's sort of two sides to it, right? It's the
Right.
artistry,
Collaboration.
but it's a lot of the thinking that is having to happen at the beginning, because if AI can replace a lot of the repetitive tasks, as you
Yep.
say, the mundane, then it becomes
Here's the
can we
thing.
think through these cases?
Obviously, Conrad and Jack, you have the respect of many amazing clinicians because you're vetted, you're in the world of research and collaboration. But what is the barrier with this idea of the doctor and lab technician, right? There seems like, well, do I really want to listen to my lab guy tell me
Right.
how to do this? Right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I can't agree more. That's the one thing that always boggles me is it's your job to know. It's my job to know. It's his job to know.
Mm-hmm.
The day of a lab technician that does single posterior crowns are coming to an end rapidly. I got into a little tussle on Facebook with a guy the other day, and I said, no, you can't do this. And he answered just old school technician, blah, blah, blah. I wrote back, I said, maybe next time you'll do a little research, because we have to look at our presentations now.
Yeah.
We're quoting Dr. Lawson, we're quoting this, we're showing scientific proof, because if you don't know what you have. The products are changing so rapidly. It is my job to know, I can't know, but I can guess that this would be a good choice. Look at just 6 months, 8 months ago when we spoke, or just before COVID, I would have sold you high glass, millable pucks all day long.
Right.
And we don't touch them anymore.
Right.
So it changes rapidly, but it's a great place to be.
Well, lab technicians are now going to organizations like the Academy of Osteointegration, and our lab technician attends doctors' courses, and you're here at doctors' courses.
And how do you, on the converse, so you have a new clinician come in, right? So this is maybe the classic. The new clinician comes in who doesn't have treatment planning knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So how are you working these clinicians?
Yeah,
So get to a point where you can have discussions, because when
Yeah.
they come out of, say, dental school, prosthodontics is different.
Right.
But when they come out of dental school and they want to do these sexy, cool cases,
Right.
like we all want to do
They
sexy,
see it on
cool cases,
Instagram,
they're like,
and they
I saw it.
call, hey,
It's easy.
Absolute
Instagram.
Dental's doing
Right.
it.
Right.
Instagram.
I heard
Signature
if I
line.
call Conrad, he can hook me up. How do you work
Just let
them
him
from,
do my case.
Yeah.
get them, because I don't know if you've seen the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? But it's this curve where, at the beginning you think you know everything and you really know nothing.
Right.
And as you get experience, you realize you know nothing at all. And then
Right.
finally you realize you never really knew as you get more experience, but you're more confident. How do you work someone from thinking they know to knowing that they don't know to realizing that maybe you guys can work together?
Yeah, and I just got asked the same question. You mentioned the Instagram thing. It's kind of funny. So Instagram, there's lots of studies how it's bad for teenage girls' health. It's actually bad for clinicians' health as well.
100%.
Yeah.
But that might go on Twitter later.
Yeah. So, but
that might go on Twitter, not
That's right.
Instagram
Yeah.
later. Right.
Somebody just asked me, how do you speak to clinicians? And I had to think about it. And I told them an answer. I'm like, yeah, well, I just talked to them, and, they just obviously listen. I don't know. And I went back and thought about the question, and then emailed the doctor back and said, I know how. So for me, a lot of it is just my personality, I think. I listen.
I'll give you a
first.
little credit.
Yeah.
I think why our team has been successful is because we would draw the battle lines and say, this is what we will and this is what we won't. And I think when Jack does a case planning, or Dries or anybody like that, we don't always know, but I think we have a pretty good idea. And like you talked about prototyping this morning,
Yeah.
Jack will not go to final if the prototype is not approved in the mouth, not move the midline, let's go to final, let's redo that.
Right.
So I think lab techs over the years has maybe felt maybe a little secondary to the clinical world.
That's
You know,
totally true. They feel secondary.
and I don't
But
think
at the
you-
same
you can.
time, I don't know that the quality of dentistry that we're seeing out there is getting better. I hate to say that. You guys can't say that as
Right.
easily as what we maybe can.
It's true.
But we've been in the model room of labs.
According to the
And you
American
look
Dental
at-
Association,
like
it
a-
is getting
Yeah,
worse.
it's like a
Yeah.
wasteland in there. You're like, how in the world are you guys even doing this? You know, it seems like that's becoming more common. So at the same time, there's more of this divide. It seems crazy to me. And yet we think we can look at Instagram and go, oh, well, we'll pull this off easily.
It's
So
just-
you really have to, it's kid gloves, I would think. You really have to
Yeah.
be careful to have those discussions. But you guys have figured it out.
And I think, Jack, you would agree, you know, when we started the lab in 2000, you know, it's a different type of message. You know, it's more, don't upset anybody because we can't afford
Right.
it. And I think we're very respectful. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, you
I
know,
think it's just how you have that conversation. It's having respect for the individual or the clinician on the other end of the phone. It's your voice, it's your tone, it's everything about your being. That it's a respect amongst each other that really helps with it. That's what I was asked, those difficult conversations. I talked about, I received a case where it was a PVS impression. It was first single unit to fixture level, no transfer, closed tray, open tray, none of that. It was PVS shot right into the fixture and then the impression pulled. And that's when the question got asked, how do you have that conversation? And I think it's, I don't go into anything with any type of ego or bias. It's how I approach the clinician with respect, and they mutually, then they give that back. I treat people how they would like to be treated.
This is a conversation for the ages because it's about humbleness and really, I don't know everything. I know that my laboratory technician has always made me a better technician in the clinic. And what I know is I can't do everything. You guys are doing this every single day. And when I would recommend that you listen to what you just said there is come to the table on our side, on the doctor's side, listening, first, and then suggesting and making a collaboration, right? We can do that even better today because it's all virtual. We can look at the designs. I mean, for goodness sakes, I get movies all the time, movies per se, you want to call it that, of my abutment designs. And it's so easy for us to collaborate and make things even better.
During COVID, we helped through some guided surgeries with the cell phone duct tape to the overhead light.
That's right.
It's just thinking outside the box all of a sudden. Well, I do think, you know, technicians, last point,
you're good.
we need to understand what our clinicians are dealing with. I think that's what I was, Jack as well. We grew up chairside. So, you know, I had a lady call one day and she canceled a full rehab appointment. And she looked at me, she goes, what's the big deal? I just asked for one more day. I said, no, you just canceled 6 hours of that schedule. And she never understood that. You know, it's just, what's the big deal? It's just one day. No, it's a whole schedule destroyed.
Right.
So I think, and that's where our industry is going, more education. We love coming to these things because we learn just as much as we can teach. And I think that's where
And
it
I
should
think
go.
that says a lot. The fact that not only are you guys here obviously speaking because you're on the other side of that of, hey, we've gained knowledge. We know a couple of things. We figured some things out. You're contributing back to the community, but also you're here to learn. And I think that if both sides of that equation are there for the same reason, we're able to work together well. And I think so that's why we're here. I mean, frankly, we're here at this meeting and engaging with these types of folks because we know, especially as GPs, that there's a huge need to engage in education and collaboration because we know that, like you say, there's fewer of you folks around. So
where can people find you right now? I mean, you guys are doing a lot of lecturing and things like that.
Talk about how people can connect and get involved with you guys.
Yeah, our social media, we do a ton of social media. Anything from Facebook to, it's funny, Instagram.
Oh, no.
We just do a YouTube.
I still don't understand most of the things we do.
But you do them.
Like,
somebody asked me right
works.
now after the lecture, he's like, what's your Instagram? I'm like, I don't have one. But we have an absolute Absolute Dental one. It's Absolute Dental 25. You could always find us on social media. And there, you know, we have ADS talks where a lot of what we'll do is the new techniques, the new materials. We'll do short 2-3 minute videos, try to pack as much information as we can to try to keep everybody up to speed of what we're seeing from the laboratory side.
Yeah.
And
So-
we still center everything around our website, which is
Sure.
absolutedentallab.com.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have pictures up of the Flexera cases?
Yeah.
On your,
amazing.
on your
Yeah.
social media?
Let's
on
check
the
that
social
out.
media.
Check out.
And that's right. The website is a great spot, and all of the social media stems based right off the website.
Well, I
so.
think for a high level conversation surrounding Flexera, right? That's the
Mhm.
product name. We need to have you guys back
Yeah.
on the show.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
to dive
and,
into that.
and if you're looking for some great content that really still lives, it's really good regardless of the prediction. We went through a series of podcasts where we go over working with the edentulous patient and
Yeah.
going through some of those step-by-step appointments and how you can communicate with your lab.
Mhm.
You just need to go back in that content on the Dental Guys podcast and check out Jack and Conrad as they come on the show, and maybe look for future shows with them talking about future products that really will enhance our care for the future, maybe not break, you know, after,
That's right.
after
Exactly. Where you can
Right.
still come back the next show and say, yeah, we're still with
we're
you on
still
that.
with you on
Yeah,
that.
we're all searching for that.
I don't
right?
think
Absolutely.
anything we said on the last podcast is still true. Is it?
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's technology, though, right?
That's-
That's just how it goes
That's the
these
speed
days.
we're moving at
That's
right now. Yeah.
And we love that because, you know, we've got somebody's got to be out there, you know, forging ahead on that. That's how we get better. So
Yeah.
thank you guys
Thank
for
you guys
being
for
together.
being
with
on
us
the show.
Thank you
today.
guys
It's
so
great to
much.
hang out.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Always
it.
a pleasure.
All right,
Thank
yeah.
you.
See you guys.
John, again, I think as far as I'm concerned, is you've got some of those are the leaders right there.
Absolutely.
Right. And, you know, I want to drink special sauce. I get excited. I'm a cowboy. I like to move forward. I like to try things. You know,
Yeah.
I remember me doing the first zirconia hybrid. You were like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
And the thing is that, you know, who was behind that zirconia hybrid and the technology behind it? Jack.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
because
We didn't even know it at
we
the
didn't
time.
even know it at the time.
But he was one of those people that was pushing to bring zircons on
yes.
and that into the U.S. and one of the first people to start really pushing that.
right.
And now we see, you know, coming full circle, that they are the ones also looking for what's next.
Yeah.
So,
So,
pretty awesome to have
pretty
that
awesome.
conversation and know that they're going to be continuing to be pushing forward and connecting back to what we talked about with Mark
some of
Ludlow.
the things that is really for me that ring is that we are really searching for something that lasts maybe too long.
Yeah,
Right?
isn't that interesting that we are so, like, you think about what happened with zirconia crowns.
Yes.
You know, we thought, oh, we found the white gold,
Yes.
right? And that made us so happy as dentists. But, you know, we kind of forgot sometimes some of the principles of occlusion that meant you didn't maybe need to have the strongest material. It
That's
was
right.
about having the best material
Right.
overall, but maybe that isn't always the thing that lasts forever. It's something that is, again, can we make it more affordable?
Right.
Can we make it accessible to more patients?
And I think something that's always come up on the show is where does this need to be researched at, right?
Mhm.
And you hear what they're saying is we don't only need corporations researching this, we need third-party verification.
That's right.
We need people doing research in the university setting
Right.
as well.
Well,
so
the
you're,
labs feel the burn too, because they often are the ones doing the research along with the clinicians in
it's
the
the
field.
lab's fault if it
And
breaks.
then it all breaks, and then who holds the bag, right? So we need
Yeah.
we need our manufacturers, and I think they are. We need them to step up and say, here's where we're vetting our products, we're working with the lab, we're coming with studies. That
Mhm.
way we can feel like what we're putting in the patient's mouth is the right thing. So
Yeah.
great
A
conversation.
great conversation. Look for more of that on the future.
Now we're going to change it up back to something you and I have talked a lot
Right.
about in the last couple of years. It's been interesting to hear about what's going on in the DSO business model.
Has your community changed because of the DSO model? I mean, I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. You're in Greenville. We're in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I see there has been a change
Sure.
because of the DSO model, right?
Yes.
And that's why we've got our next guest on the show, right?
So we'd like to welcome Dr. Hans-Peter Weber. Thank you for being with us.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to talk to you. And this is, I remember when I heard that this is what we were going to be seeing from you. And I thought, oh, this is interesting because you've spoken on a lot of very clinical topics
Yes.
over the years. And yet now with AO, we're seeing today this very interesting discussion that's happening this afternoon about business and different business models and how that affects implant dentistry. Talk a little bit about yourself before we talk about that, get into that. Tell us who you are and what you do and where you are.
Yeah, thank you. I was born and raised in Switzerland and did my dental school training over there. Met a nice girl who at the end wanted to go back to the States, and I had a choice: do I stay home in Switzerland or do I come to the States? Had done a lot with Americans over there, and it was an easy move.
Good.
Except having to go back to dental school. That was the only thing. But we made out well, and I ended up at Harvard, which was great, and became department chair there. Needed a little fresh wind in 2010, and went to Tufts. They were searching, and their business model was a little different, a little more in my favor, with kids having to go to college. And then in 2018, I was, as a good old Swiss, more than retirement material. In Switzerland, everybody retires with 65, except some dentists who might work longer. And I was just not ready. And I thought I would go teach part-time and maybe practice 2 days. I was doing outside practice 1 day. And then I got a call from Steve Eckert, Dr. Eckert, who was the president of this group and had been with Clear Choice for a long time, at DSO for a long time. And he said, would you be interested? I said, I never thought about it. And so I met the leadership, I met the colleagues. There's several good colleagues in here who were in academics or in hospital settings who had joined the DSO, and they were all happy with it. And most of them would say, but the greatest reward is the patient reward, because you have those patients with impossible, I didn't even know these exist, to the level of a number they existed in Massachusetts with destroyed dentitions, just never went to the dentist. And suddenly they have this life-changing moment and enlightening, and they see an ad of this DSO, and so maybe I go check it out.
And it brought joy to you, and at a time where you might be, you know, somewhere else and not even practicing dentistry and still doing something you love.
Yeah, it's there, and the advantage has been that clearly a lot of the management is taken from my shoulders. I would not have been experienced enough to come from academics, where you have a support system in human resources, in legal. You know, you don't have to care about those things. You manage your department, but to go into a private practice where you have to do everything on your own, be knowledgeable in all those aspects, it would have been a tough thing to do. So I could really focus on what I liked, is seeing patients.
Yes. Now, this idea of kind of being drawn into that because of the desire to help patients and do something exciting, and also had the connections with others that had done similar things. That's one way that people kind of become part of DSO model. Another sometimes is through maybe wanting to transition out of their practice, or maybe partially, maybe again, take some of that pressure off of their shoulders. What do you think the future looks like for that in implant dentistry and maybe dentistry in general? Where are we headed with the DSO model?
I think it will go in the DSO direction more and more. I understand why the older generation, it could be me, if I had been for years in my private practice and now comes this DSO, I probably would be upset too. But we also have to say we will only be there for a few more years. And the young generation clearly goes that line. When you look at I just read among dentists below 35 years, only 1 in 4 is in solo practice. It's group practice or it's DSO. And when you look at the numbers, I think in 1999, it was 2 out of 3 were in solo practice. These are male dentists. And now it's 1 out of 2 in 2019.
So the days of the solo practitioner may be a bit numbered somewhat.
I think they will not be totally numbered. There will always be these enthusiasts, let's call them, who like to have their own job, and they find the right environment. They'll provide for a group of patients. And there will be patients who always will like that model better.
Do you think that it'll happen more in the specialist realm first, or do you feel like that the days of the general practitioner being, as a sole practitioner, because for years, I mean, general practitioners practiced sole practitioner, and it was very rare to see group practices, but we've seen group practices in specialist organizations for years. And it seems like even in our own community, we're seeing some of these DSOs move in with the specialists.
Yeah, seems like that market. I mean, we know some of for instance, the oral surgery DSOs have become there's huge numbers of practices that have joined up. Do you think the specialist market is moving faster?
I'm not so sure if it's on the prosthodontic side the same. I think I know now the surgeons, we have associated ourselves with a group of surgeons in Quincy. They provide our services, South Shore Oral Surgery. They just joined the DSO. And the owner, David Lasbader, is thrilled. He says all this administrative stuff is taken away. Now it's very much his own practice. Characteristic hasn't changed. And I think there's so many different levels of DSO involvement.
Yes.
That it's a little bit hard to compare.
Right. You have the, sort of the independent DSO model where we have like a silent partner in the practice. And then we have I'm joining up with a business model that clearly I'm changing the name of my practice and it's becoming a copy of another office. It's very different.
And what attracted me to the DSO I'm in is when I started talking with them, there was a clear mission and a purpose. We want to get rid of dentures in the world. We want to give hope to patients who otherwise are lost. And I could clearly identify with that. And then all the background information came, how many dentures, periodontal disease. And I saw it live with all those patients. So I thought, they all would be treated, but they just haven't gone to the dentist. And then obviously the general dentist is their go-to person, but the general dentist's ability is limited. I mean, and I think it's more limited than in the generations before. When I see or hear what older faculty members say, oh, I made 80 crowns in my dental school. Well, I was made 7 at the end.
And that goes to this question.
Big difference.
This goes to this question. I mean, like even in my training, it was a lot of gold onlay work and this transition into a different way of teaching dental students, and the number of reps we're even able to get in certain procedures. Is the DSO model a better model to take our graduates, right, and raise the level or the standard of care? Is that the answer?
It could be the answer if the DSO is a good DSO and does it the right way.
So what is a good DSO?
I would say our DSO is a great one because there's so much emphasis on best practices in clinic, in operation, and in culture. And there is seminars, we have doctors meetings, staff has meetings. During COVID, it was a little more difficult, but we had the convention still virtually. And the CEO is very much on top of making sure we have a good culture.
And I think that is, from the beginning, I think DSOs, the initial reaction from many dentists was, oh, well, that's going to be bad for dentistry, or that this quality will be lower because it is
about quantity.
Because it's a corporate mentality. But that's not necessarily true.
No, but that's what I mean with a good DSO and the bad DSO. If they just put you on a financial target and nothing else, you might just be as lost as in a solo practice or practice with a colleague. But if it's a model like we have, there is clinical education, you have peers who have done it for a long time.
Yes.
And there's really a regional team. You talk to each other. I did this yesterday, I saw that yesterday, what you do. So it's a great interaction.
Yeah. So there's go ahead.
At a bigger scale, but the group practice would be the alternative to that. And I think for the general dentist, that job might be something. If you're in an initiative, general dentist with a good business savviness, you hire some the specialists around you. You can be the chief of the practice.
I think the thing that's frustrating for patients is this rotating door of clinicians in and out of DSOs in some realms, right?
Sometimes that can be a problem.
And that can be a problem. And really, who am I seeing today? And that because dentistry is so personal, right, to the patient, especially in the hygiene realm. And because it's almost like a hairstylist per se, not to to kind of compare. It's like to get
a relationship
that's established, and then the next time you come, Well, that's
somebody else. Yeah.
Right? What are DSOs, good DSOs, doing to retain, right, the clinicians, keep them from moving on?
Yeah, so I think culture is important. And I have a young associate, and I ask her, what would you say is negative or positive? And in her case, transparency came through as the main word, the transparent contract. I know that's what I get. And if I get promoted or go to the next level, that's what it will be. And she had experience in a couple of private practices before where this didn't happen. And so I think that's just the more professional or the business attitude of a bigger group, of a corporation like that, where those areas are covered better.
Certainly, I think too, dentists are trained technically proficient in dental school to come out and provide a certain level of care to the patient population. But one thing that's always lacked is business training.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I started private practice from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, and like, man, the toils, right, that you go through in that. Is this the opportunity for a clinician to truly focus on being a clinician and educate? So speak to what DSOs are doing to provide even education for the technician.
So we have a centralized lab, and there's a conventional component, a digital component. And if we hire a new technician, that's probably was the most frequent rehire we had to do. And they're not easy to come by. They would go to Denver, to the headquarters, and in the central lab, and get trained in the techniques they need to know, which are specific to what we do most of the time. And then there is consistent, continuous training also, either online or live or at the meetings, where they are provided that information.
Right. So even for dentists too, the doctors, I mean, are they giving a stipend to, in some situations, to go to meetings like the Academy of Osseointegration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes out of my office. You know, it's obviously my office.
Right.
And if I go over with my expenses, somebody will probably tell me you splurged a little too much.
Yes.
But we have sort of a certain maximum per year for meetings.
Sure.
And that's that definitely a maximum covers.
One of the things that medicine, I think, has figured out is that they need to have accountability, so that and collaboration. Dentistry for years, it was we had our own ship that we were commanding, and that, you know, if we went to meetings and we chose to show people our stuff, then we could be held accountable. But if we didn't want to show anybody our stuff, we kind of had our own little area, and we didn't really know how our successes or failures compared. It seems like one thing I'm seeing is that, you know, as you're talking about, I'm showing people what I'm doing every day. We have collaboration, we have accountability. There is a certain standard that you're expected to keep. And although that might sound constraining, it's also a good thing. It sounds like if the standard is a good standard, is it possible that DSOs could elevate the standard of dentistry?
I think so. The good DSO, again, who cares about that, and who has clinicians in it who are eager to improve too, who don't say, oh, well, I don't care what they tell me, I just do it my way. And so I think for a younger dentist, it could be a great assistance to be in a system like that, to learn the trade of business too.
Yes.
Of running a practice, and maybe 5 years later, open your own if you really want. I think by that time, you probably realized all the advantages of being in that system that allows me to focus on what I really like to do, which is dentistry.
Yeah. And you know, so many, I mean, just even in the past 2-3 years, I think people are they're thinking about really what they want to take home with them, right, every day. And like Dr. J. Malmquist said earlier, is that dentistry is a profession where really it blends over into the evening. It's beyond 8 hours, and it blends over into the weekend sometimes, and it can affect your spouse. And DSOs, a good DSO, right, could maybe be the answer to really job satisfaction.
Well, and I think DSOs have hit it at the right time, whether they knew it or not, with COVID. COVID did an interesting thing to all of us, right?
Yes.
It caused us all
I admire all of you for how you get through that.
Yeah, whether it was the business losing money, or whether it was I don't know that was as much the thing as we thought it might be, but it's just, I think it centered our minds many
Yeah.
times on balance.
Yeah.
And that's what a DSO can potentially provide, is more balance in your life.
And that's, I think, what the younger generation is looking for. And they also see, $500,000 in tuition bills to pay back.
Yes.
And then you want to open the practice, that's another million. And then at the end, I work 24 hours, 24/7.
That's right.
And that's not what I want to do. And I might make more money,
Mm-hmm.
but I rather take a little less and have quality of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Cost of education definitely makes this an appealing thing, especially whenever payback comes into play. You work this long, we're going to pay this much of your loans. It's a sign-on bonus per se, and an agreement. And I think looking for the good DSOs, and I want you to give a couple characteristics, because you probably have some young listeners listening to this that haven't graduated yet. Give us the good DSO characteristics. Maybe just
what
a few
should they look
highlights.
for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that. Definitely, what's an educational component? What's my mentor? Is there mentorship? Am I just put in on a financial target, and if I don't reach it, you dump me basically. So that I would like to see that educational component as an important one, where you grow. Hopefully there is a more senior person in that office where you can learn from and grow that way.
Mentorship,
Yeah.
right? Education, so that you can grow.
Well, the interesting thing that we'll say, and this, I don't think we'll step on too many toes, but maybe a couple. There's been an interesting thing that we've seen, and this is not universal, but some of the older dentists, as they've been looking to transition out, if they did not take the DSO model, have just taken the model of, we want to put a young doctor in and not mentor them, and just basically say, we want you to end. Maybe you get all the cases that are not so great, and maybe you do the things I don't really want to do. And when there's something that's very profitable, I'll come in and take that. And we hear that from a lot of young associate doctors who've gotten out and have maybe been in practices, private practices, where they felt that there's not that mentorship. And it's kind of a shame that the DSO might provide better mentorship than private practice. And I know there's obviously tons of private practices that provide great mentorship.
Absolutely.
But I think DSOs have said, hey, this is a good DSO, which I think most of them understand this. There has to be mentorship in order for that business to grow. That's just good business. And but I suppose if all you care about is the next year of your life, you say, "Oh, I don't care. We'll just be out of here." Yeah. But the DSO knows, hey, in order for us to be successful, mentorship is critical to that. And I think young doctors are getting out knowing that. As you say, if they only did 7 crowns, they need some mentorship.
Yeah, I mean, some they are confident.
Sure.
Number 8 is my best one ever, and I go from there.
Right.
They will do implants if they're straight or not. It doesn't matter.
Right.
They just don't have that level. They're somewhat careless and aggressive, and it will come.
Yeah.
And others are more, and I was more that type. And in Switzerland, we didn't have postgraduate programs. So you went into private practices and you knew exactly who the good mentors are. So you signed up 2 years with somebody cosmetic and another year with somebody dentures. And that's what I sort of imagine these people need to be around to take care of those young dentists who just didn't have quite enough experience in their education.
That's right. That's right. And I hear that, again, good DSOs are able to they've realized that. They understand that. And I think there's no end in sight to the cost of education going up. No. And so knowing that, there comes a point where people have to do something with that.
Right.
And it's interesting too. I recently heard a presentation of Marko Vujovic from the ADA, and there is a few dental schools. He showed percentages of dental students coming out of different programs, going into DSOs or groups or solo. And there are certain dental schools, the newer ones, the recent dental schools, they are almost directly affiliated
with the DSOs.
With DSOs and feed the DSO.
Right, right.
And that's I feel like that's coming because if you come out with $500,000, you have to have a job.
Educational debt is not sustainable, right? No, especially, we've embraced women in our community, and dentists have embraced that women can bring so much to patient care. And now greater than 50% of the people in dental school are women in the United States. And I think that's fantastic because women do bring something to the table when it comes to the chairside demeanor, the care that they give. They have a certain facet that just brings a different personality to it. And I like that. Yeah. And I think that for those that are coming out with this surmountable debt, the DSO could be a great place for some people that don't want to work, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, even 3 days a week. Like yourself, you've said that, I want to work, and I want to be in a place where it's fun, but I don't want to have that flexibility. So for women, this could be fantastic too. Or a man that doesn't want to work full time.
Right. Either way, having that flexibility to make decisions for your family life, for your personal life, as well as your business life, and having it to be
work-life balance.
That's right. More of a balance. And yet I think too, what's more exciting for somebody in your world who you've been at a high level doing great dentistry, you're coming at it from a whole different world. Yes, it's some balance, but it's also, you're getting to do fun things. You're getting to have fun and treat patients and, get compensated for what and that's something that, at the quote unquote end of your career, toward retirement, you're not just saying, well, I've just got to get rid of all this. So you can stay in that fun environment and get to be pushed and challenged and all of that.
I think as business changes in the United States and across the world, retirement is going to be a different thought process. And I'm excited for the future. And I'm excited that you came on to be able to discuss this topic. I know you're going to be presenting here this afternoon, and that's going to be fantastic. Tell us a little bit about what you're presenting.
Yeah, pretty much of what we discussed here on the advantages and disadvantages of being in a DSO affiliated practice. And I will show a lot of the need. I mean, that was my motivator. See all those people in need who normally wouldn't be able to afford it. They pay a fortune in there. I mean, it's a lot cheaper or less expensive than if I did it in a regular private practice.
Because of the scale, you're able to offer an affordable option that is really just amazing.
And I have examples where patients with, destroyed dentition because of periodontal disease, they went to a periodontist of prominence, and even the periodontist has to say, teeth out, implants in, $120,000.
Yes, exactly.
And he said, I can't afford that.
Yes,
right. And so he said, actually, go to Quincy.
And the other thing,
we can do it for maybe 2/3, less than two, a little more than half of that.
Right.
And then with helping with financing and all that, it becomes affordable for a certain number of patients.
It's an amazing service. It really is.
And DSOs are also, as we kind of close out there, because you've always been involved in research, DSOs are providing another interesting niche, which is because they're consolidating a lot of patients and cases. There's a lot of data, and I'm starting to see that feeding back. Because Ole Jensen was, for years, a lot of the data that he was presenting in journals was coming from a DSO. And that's another
actually
place.
Will be my next role. I will reduce practice to 2 days and will work with Steve Eckert at CCMS in the research group.
Yeah, fantastic.
That I can do from home.
That's right.
Nice.
Work remotely,
so
right? Yes. Kick up the feet, drink the coffee.
That's right. Well, we're looking forward to hearing your talk this afternoon. Thank you for being with us and kind of sharing your knowledge and it gives us a lot to think about. A lot of our listeners to think about as far as what their practice choices should be in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for joining us. Thank you for having me.
Right.
That's great.
Absolutely.
John, again, I think, man, this has been a marathon of everything, right? From, 3D printing to, how I brought an associate in to a high level, like specialized practice to what a DSO can do for us now. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than this kind of content.
Absolutely.
And as we move into close out, and have an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the pearls.
Well, we first did this. I just will say, I want to go back in time a little bit.
Back up.
Just a little bit. A lot bit.
Yes.
Because we've been coming to AO meetings for a long time, almost 15 years. We really haven't missed any. One meeting I think we had to miss. And, we started with the podcast back in 2015. And we started doing an AO recap back, I think in 2017.
Yeah.
And then 2018 we did. So
We did one remotely that we couldn't.
Right.
We bought all the videos.
We got the videos, but we couldn't go to that meeting, right?
You're right.
So what's kind of cool is to kind of bring this full circle and do a true AO recap at the AO live at this booth. Once again, thank you to the Academy for collaborating with us, for putting together this amazing booth with some amazing people in the background behind us, kind of supporting us, getting the speakers there when they need to be there. It's just been a great experience. So what have we learned? What have we learned from the last couple of days, as it's been a whirlwind of great content? I think for me, I'll kind of start with that. I think we have heard a lot about what's coming with the virtual patient. We've heard a lot about how do we collaborate in the world of digital, and that digital workflows are being developed. Like, that's happening before our eyes. We're getting to where we can do things digitally that we couldn't do before, with printing and with photography, with video. That's happening. But the way to figure this treatment planning aspect out, the collaboration between the lab and the clinician, this is still kind of being figured out. And I think it's going to be a huge challenge for dentistry. It's like we have all these tools, we have all of this technology, but then we have to take this smaller group of lab technicians that we have, and they have to process all this information. Somebody in the end has to be responsible for going through all the data, coming up with a diagnosis and a treatment plan, and then going back to execute that. And we've heard several approaches. We've heard, well, it's going to be outsourced. We'll have treatment planners that will work with clinicians to kind of figure out what needs to happen. Then the clinician in the chair executes the treatment. We've heard that the lab is going to be the one who's going to be kind of the point person. And then we've heard even that, from a standpoint of, say, full arch implant dentistry, that now maybe it's becoming easier to where one operator can do the whole thing themselves. So that to me, that's going to be interesting to see how that develops in the next couple of years.
So I'll go back to day one, right? And I'll bring up Dennis Tarnow and Howie Gluckman that were point counterpoint, socket shield versus dual zone grafting. And one of the things that I took home from that is that the amount of steps in a procedure, right, and the artistry that is required to do a procedure is not truly understood until you talk to the quote unquote inventor, right, of that procedure. And that the education of that particular method is one of those things that really determines, right, whether you're going to choose it in your practice.
The teachability of that,
right,
helps us to kind of get through who should be doing it.
But not only that, John, is the skill set of the clinician. There's only, we can diagnose a tooth and say this tooth is non-restorable pretty easily, right? I mean, you should be able to do that first.
Right.
But then I think that the good news is, right, is that there are multiple treatment options. But, right, you've got to know a little bit about each one, know the pros and cons, know when to say no, and know when to say yes.
And depending on your personality type, which is really the wild card, you can either say, I'm going to take one technique,
right, and
I'm going to really dive in, and I'm going to try to be, I'm going to kind of do the newest thing that I think might be the best, but there are some complications, but I'm going to try to become an artist, if you will. Or I'm going to choose to use a technique that I feel is the most applicable to the most types of cases. And because there still has to be a protocol in your eye, and you know how I am with this, right? We've always talked about this over the years, is that your personality type is, you're going to more dive in and say, hey, I really want to try to see if I can work this into my office, implement this.
Right.
Whereas I've kind of been like, oh, well, let's kind of hang, and I want a protocol. I want some steps.
Right.
And so I think that was good to see, kind of that point counterpoint, that artistry matters.
It does.
And certain people can achieve certain results. But then we saw the same thing with Bach Lee.
Yes.
And with Isvan Urban. And then we talked to some other clinicians who said, is that truly special sauce in special hands, or is it teachable to the masses? Is it achievable by the masses?
So I think for showstopper for me, right, if I'm just sitting here, just kind of coming off of we talked a lot of business, right? We've talked a lot about, how DSOs can help or not help us. I would say that I've been bitter towards them, right? And now I feel like that I'm more willing to listen and embrace, listen to both sides of the story, right? And I think that's kind of like me as I've changed as we've done this podcast, is that critical thinking skills and good science. As we've seen good debate, we saw Dr. Norton debate Dr. Testori.
I want to take a little side note there as we're talking about special sauce, because I think that if we look at that discussion right there, I think we are talking about can we go ahead and say that maybe the development of all of these implants toward a higher insertional torque design may not necessarily be the way we need to be going.
Right.
Not necessarily that it's bad, but is it necessary? I think we still have had a little bit of an old school versus new school mentality on that it may not be as important as what we thought.
These old adages, like, don't ever have a knee-jerk response to something, right? Well, that's it right here, is that companies knee-jerk because they're trying to find out what people would just jump on, right?
Sure.
And I think they did. I think they knee-jerked on this idea of insertional torque value super high.
Maybe
we still have companies here, right, on the floor that believe in excessive of 50 Newton centimeters insertional torque values. And I think that we need to really consider, some of this.
Is that good?
Is that good? I'm thinking right now, like I hate whenever you and we have said over the years some things that we feel like are kind of grounded, right? Because we have read and have talked to the experts so that we can bring it to you. And I'm not ready to say on yet what I think could be grounded science, but this is what the AO is about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that discussion that we had between those two viewpoints, again, there was some compromise in the middle that, hey, having some of one and some of the other, but I don't think if we make the statement that insertional torque is everything, right, and that ISQ is just we stopped doing that because I just didn't feel it was necessary. That's not really maybe
in
the way
2022 both matter.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the statement that I think I can make right now, is that both matter, and the protocols that I employ in my practice involve both. Now, going on and back to the DSO thing is like I said, I had a bitterness, right, because I think I did see some of the bad. Right. But what I heard today, as we kind of concluded, was there's some good. And I think that it can help dentistry. I really do.
Well, and it's interesting to think that partnering directly with dental schools, that the dental school is saying, hey, this is a model that lots of people are choosing as their next step after practice to go into the DSO world, and bypassing completely the idea of associateship or ownership in the conventional way. That who would have thought 20 years ago, 10 years ago, that we would have seen, that become the next step, that you would go to your fourth year and here comes the DSO in to give you a lunch and learn and say, hey, this is what 20% of your class did last year is go into our DSO. And that would be the way forward. But I do feel that if they're doing it right,
the good model like
is being done, right?
And mentors,
then I will say, though, on the other hand, it does sadden me still a little bit that the private practice world, maybe this is just me being old, maybe it is, that the private practice world couldn't do this on their own. That we couldn't, as a private practice dental world, say, because you remember Tarun Agarwal several years ago with us challenged us that if every private practice owner would just take one associate in.
That's the counterpoint right
and
here.
Mentor them in the right way and not just use them.
The $500,000 debt doesn't even come into play then.
That's right. Then everybody could come out with the whole profession gets better, instead of kind of allowing the DSO model to be to have to be the thing. But I'm glad we do see DSOs that are doing it right, and that makes me happy.
Yeah. So the another thing too is like for 99.9999% of us, right? What should we be using for full arch right now? Right. Well, I think for definitively, if we're doing fixed prosthetics, we need to be doing full arch zirconia hybrids.
Yeah.
Right. Now you might choose a different material opposing to that. Right. And some of that's being taught. You might choose a polymer in the lower. You might choose a resin in the lower, or you might put it as zirconia against zirconia. But I think that we can definitively say, which I think is a big thing for you, right? Because I mean, being the old man of the dental podcast, right?
True.
And the one that wants the protocols, we had all these questions when I jumped on zirconia. And but now I think we can definitively say that zirconia is the standard of care when it comes to fixed prosthetics.
Absolutely. And the only discussion really now becomes, what do you oppose it with?
We've never said that before. We've never said that before.
And because I think bar and acrylic for years, was so entrenched and has so many good things about it, to be fair.
Right.
A lot of good things, a lot of proof behind it. But now, really, we're at a point where zirconia is the universal material. It's just a question of what you oppose it with,
right,
and what the wear characteristics look. But what comes next is still unclear.
Right. And let me ask you a question. Did you hear anything about the Tinker Toy type style stuff here?
It's interesting when you say that. What you mean is, the bench top mills.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some
in
things.
office printing, milling.
Right.
I think it's interesting. One of the comments off camera that was made before we started the show was that by the time we get, the in-office part of this done with milling, printing will have already taken over.
Oh.
So by the time in-office milling gets good enough, printing will have taken over. That was a comment made by a high-level person off camera, and it stuck with me.
We also heard that there are things right now, as far as printing goes, that we for sure know how to do really well. We know how to print night guards.
Yep.
We know how to print temporaries, right? We know how to print aligners. We know how to print Essex retainers. We know how to print these things really, really well.
Yeah.
These are things that have a workflow that's validated for an in-office use. Is this the end? Like we said years ago about bar wrapped in acrylic, is this the end of bar wrapped in acrylic? But is this the end of our suck down machine?
And I think that's the question to me now is not whether it's validated, because that was a couple years ago, the question.
Right.
Now the question is, does it make business sense?
Right.
It's not a matter of can we do it in the office
we
with
can do
models and aligners and night guards.
That's it.
But who are you training? Are you training your assistant to become a technician? Are you going to be the technician?
Yeah.
How much time is it taking you, as well as the capital investment? Or are we going to go to the lab and rely on the lab? So for me, I mean, I know where I live in that world, and I like to go home at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I would like my laboratory to be that person. But for some people who enjoy the tinkering, or maybe have a technician or an assistant who loves it, I mean, have at it.
It's definitely a business model to consider. I don't have a printer. You don't have a printer.
Nope.
And we have
printers are super cool.
Right, printers are super cool.
I have one at home. I mean, have one at home.
You have one at home.
Right.
But I think, again, we can honestly say that for the most common applications, you could be doing this in your practice right now as far as printing and doing it very well. As far as some of the higher level things that still need to be researched, we need to, settle down. Right. Follow the leaders. Right.
Yeah.
Keep eye on the science. And so, for a recap, John, right? I mean, like, it just doesn't get any better than the content that we get here at the Academy of Osseointegration.
Absolutely.
So going forward, what's going to happen, John? Right? What's going to happen? Well, from here, what we're going to do is we're going to take all this information, and if you're hearing it and you want to hear it again, you can go back and obviously find it on the Academy of Osseointegration's Facebook page. You can find it on their YouTube channel. You can also check and subscribe to the Dental Guys on YouTube, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, as we like to say. Spotify has it. Any podcatcher is going to get the podcast, the audio format. This stuff will all be re-released.
Right. We'll take everything we did, including a lot of the things you didn't see, which was as we were in between interviews,
man on the street,
we went to talk to several companies about new things that they're doing, new products that are being released.
Stay tuned for that.
New techniques that are coming out. We recorded lots of great, which is going to be repackaged and re-released on all of the same outlets,
Right.
and also in audio format. So you get to catch up more on some of the products that some of our speakers we interviewed.
That's right.
Got to talk to them about those products at those booths and actually get some details on the nitty gritty. So that'll all be coming back to you as well. And of course, what we'll be expecting, is to hear about what's coming next with AO. And we are excited. We know that
where are we going to next, John? Next year, it's in
right.
Phoenix, Arizona.
AO is going to Phoenix next year. A nice place to be.
Right. You can go on the osseo.org and check out the next annual meeting. Until then, really, follow the journals, right? If you subscribe to the AO or don't subscribe, I implore you to, however you say
implore
that.
You. Yeah, I know what you meant.
to really go on, subscribe, and become a member of the Academy of Osseointegration.
Yeah, and they do lots of good lunch and learn stuff through the year as well to keep connected with video content and audio content, to bring some of these same speakers to you as they continue to produce good content through the year. And we'll be looking forward to those of you who couldn't join us for the meeting, hopefully getting to see you next year live and in person.
It's going to be amazing.
Because it's going to be bigger than ever. But so glad to be here. So glad to be back with in-person meetings. We look forward to connecting with you. Send us your feedback. Once again, hashtag AODentalGuys22, still live for the next little bit here as we're kind of wrapping up. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun, Wes. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
it's been a blessing,
look,
man.
it's been
pretty awesome.
It's been really fun.
Special thanks to shout out to the technical crew that's made this all happen.
Yep.
Behind the scenes, people you'll probably never see.
Yep.
But it's been
Jim,
amazing.
Fritz,
Jim,
Jen,
Fritz, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks to our ladies that are behind the scenes promoting the Dental Guys, and they mean a lot to us as well.
That's right.
And so for John, I'm Wes, and we are the Dental Guys.